with like how crazy things have been to start the year, like even like politically, like I've just adopted like a new mantra on how to like deal with the people who disagree with me, like violently, or like not even violently, like just like disagree with me to the point of not even listening. So yeah, because I don't have anybody threatening my life. Because yeah, that's what's going on. And yeah, like just essentially, I've told all my enemies very politely to go home.
It's 2026. I don't know if that's going to work, but I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, man. And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is we travel to Ukraine, and we go all the way to Uganda. But ladies and gentlemen, we know geography, so we take the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I'm the one who wakes up in the morning and steps outside and takes a deep breath and gets real high and screams from the top of his lungs, "What's going on?" Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the I wish I could take a deep breath through my lungs, but I feel like it would just turn me into a popsicle, Matthew James Durzik. It is freezing out there today, and for those of you who don't know what we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's pretty much right there in the title. Hey, listen to this. Every week, me and Ryan, we get together, we decide to listen to a music album of our choosing, or perhaps the other's choosing, depending on how you look at it. And we go through the album track by track, note by note, line by line. We pick out what we like, what we don't like, and we decide, based on a score out of 10, what we think the album deserves. We recommend an album based on the album that we just talked about. And then we select a new album, and the cycle begins anew again. And we choose albums based on different things, whether it's an album we like, an album that we're curious about that we may not have listened to, and soon enough, there may be other reasons why we choose albums to discuss. But as far as albums we already have discussed, Ryan, what did we discuss last time out?
We had so much fun covering Taylor Swift in the review of the Torture Post Department. We decided to run it back with her latest LP. And for those of you who have lived under a rock or just refuse to acknowledge pop music in the year of our Lord 2026, her latest LP, as of this recording, is indeed The Life of a Showgirl. And for me, doing that review, I always think it's important for myself to be aware of, like, the big releases, and not even just be aware of, like, just be like, hey, like, because I know, for example, like, Sabrina Carpenter's, like, latest LP, I'm aware of it. Have I ever listened to it? No. But, like, I feel like, it's important for me to understand, hey, this is what's going on in the modern pop scene outside of, like, your own bubble. And, like, I'm glad we did the review. Kind of, like, not going to really spoil the end result for the listener. If you want to hear, like, my full thoughts and opinions, just go back one episode in the current, like, platform that you're listening to us on. You know what to do. You're an educated person. You woke up this morning. I'm proud of you for that. But, yeah, Matthew, how about you? What were your thoughts about running it back with T Swift last week?
At first, I was a little not thrilled about doing the new Taylor Swift album because I had listened to it and I had thoughts one way or the other. But I'm kind of glad we revisited it because I think it put clear thoughts in my head about what I thought that album was, for better or worse. If you want to find out what side I'm on, again, you can go check out the episode. But regardless of my thoughts on the songs themselves and the album as a whole, the review itself was nice, it was fun, and it definitely had a level of catharsis to it because it allowed me to just sort of say things I've been thinking about as far as some of the songs on the album for a while. So I'm very glad that we did the review.
And with those things that you were saying, it also helped us practice our art of disagreement with one song particularly. But, again, dear listener, not to beat a dead horse with another dead horse at this point. If you want to know what that song was, just go back one episode and, check it out. But meanwhile, regarding this episode, we must press on. T Swift is done for now. We might revisit her again in the future. Who knows? We might revisit a new album that will be coming out, this year or next year, whatever that might be. But regarding this review, Matthew, it is indeed your turn to guide us into a new musical direction. What do you have cooked up for the listeners out there?
So this week, I decided to give you a couple options between a pair of albums that were recorded by bands or artists before they got famous. And I made you choose between 1973 and 1997, the years those albums were released. You chose 1997. And this week we're going to be talking about the one and only album by the band that is called Kara's Flowers. The only official album, I should say, and I'll get to why in a second. So for those of you who are wondering, what is a Kara's Flowers? So this is a band that was formed in the early 90s in California. And the personnel of this band, I will go from the back of the band to the front of the band. You had Ryan Dusick on drums and percussion. You had bassist Mickey Madden on backing vocals and rhythm guitar. You had Jesse Carmichael, and on lead vocals and lead guitar, you had a man by the name of Adam Levine. Now, if that name perks up your ears and you're saying, uh-oh, I know that name. Is this a band that Adam Levine was in before Maroon 5? Kind of. Except this band would end up becoming Maroon 5. We are talking about the debut album, the debut professional album by Maroon 5, back when they were called Kara's Flowers. Now, they started out as Kara's Flowers, and they released a self-released demo album in 1995 entitled We Like Digging. And I have not heard a single song off that album. I am slightly curious, but not that curious. And so when they decided to go professional, because someone out there was like, hey, these guys might be good, they were signed to Reprise Records, home to many different artists like Neil Young, etc. And then they set out to make their full professional debut. Now, the producer that they got was a man by the name of Rob Cavallo. And Ryan, are you familiar with that man's name?
I am, and I know he's probably produced some records that I very much enjoyed in the past, but without Googling him, because, I'm going to be very honest, I couldn't name, records that he's, touched in the past, but I'm sure you're going to throw out some examples for the listener and myself, so have at her, man.
Oh, that was my plan, but I figured I would jump into it with a question first. So just to name a few of the albums that Rob Cavallo has produced that have achieved mass critical acclaim and or platinum status. I'll start with a big one. The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. Dizzy Up the Girl by the Goo Goo Dolls. And just to name a few of his biggest band, Dookie, Insomniac, Nimrod, American Idiot, Saviors, all by the band Green Day. On top of that, because he was the man behind Dizzy Up the Girl by the Goo Goo Dolls, he is also responsible for one of the most ubiquitous songs ever on rock and or adult contemporary radio, that being Iris. He is also responsible for 3 songs off of the Tarzan soundtrack, and 3 you probably know, being Strangers Like Me, Son of Man, and of course the big one, You'll Be in My Heart, all recorded for this Tarzan soundtrack, and of course Phil Collins being the man behind all of them. and some others in there. He was a producer for Rock and Roll Jesus by Kid Rock. He was the producer of Eric Clapton's Blue Eyes Blue, which is a nice deep cut from the Runaway Bride soundtrack. But before all of that, he pretty much was linked to one band only, and that was Green Day, because this again is 1997. So he had produced Dookie, he had produced Insomniac. I think Nimrod was already out by this point, that or he was working on it at the time. But he decided to be the producer of Kara's Flowers and create The Fourth World. Now, we'll get into what happened on The Fourth World, but after this album was released, the band went on hiatus for a few years, maybe touring, maybe gigging. It's not really explanatory. But by 2002, they had recruited another guitarist in their band, a man by the name of James Valentine. They renamed themselves Maroon 5. They released an album entitled Songs About Jane. And the rest, as they say, is history. As they would rack up big hits like This Love, She Will Be Loved, Harder to Breathe, Makes Me Wonder, and then you get into the other part of their career where they seem to be more or less a vehicle for the frontman Adam Levine, with songs like One More Night, moves like Jagger, Payphone, Maps, Girls Like You. I could go on. They have been a staple of pop radio for the better part of 2 decades, for better or worse. Now, speaking of for better or worse, before I get into my thoughts about my experiences with Kara's Flowers and Maroon 5 as a whole, Ryan, I will let you take the floor with that first.
So, I mean, it goes without saying, based on my reaction at the end of last week's review, where I didn't know about Kara's Flowers, that this is my experience with it. This is my first time diving into, that cracking open that bottle of Kara's Flowers for the first time. So, I'm about to, tell the listener, throughout this review, my experience enjoying Kara's Flowers. But, with the other band, the more prominent band that came from this group, that being Maroon 5, I mean, when they first broke on the scene with Songs About Jane, really enjoyed the singles off of that record. Not really much of an album kind of person at that point in my life. If memory serves me right, I was 12 years old, so my brain, not to backhand anybody who only listens to singles, but my music habits didn't develop into the sense that they are right now. But yeah, the singles that they would produce, they would be pretty good. And going on outside of that album, a couple of the singles that came off of the follow-up albums from Songs About Jane were pretty solid. And then it seems like to me at one point Maroon 5 kind of vanished off the map until Adam Levine was a judge on The Voice, and the song Moves Like Jagger basically kind of blew the fuck up because of that show. And, because of the song being, what it is. And then it seemed like from there on out, Maroon 5 kind of took the career trajectory similar to, what Fall Out Boy did with their discography, moving away from, I think the album I want to pinpoint in their discography that pivoted their sound was After Fall They Do. You get into the more poppy, hyper pop kind of sound, mainly just kind of stripping away the instrumentation and just more focusing the gears to a more synthetic kind of sound. And for me, that was a bit of a turnoff. I'm not really much into that. I mean, maybe one day we can cover some Fall Out Boy in our show here, but that is not this review. But yeah, that's basically my overall thoughts about Maroon 5. Not to sound like that kind of hipster kind of person, but their older stuff is in I'm more likely to spin like, She Will Be Loved and This Love as compared to, like, moves like Jagger and, like, anything that's been released since then. So I'm going to flip the floor back over to you, Matthew. You might have a little bit more familiarity with Kara's Flowers than myself, but, like, tell the dear listener and myself, what is your experience with said Flowers and also with Maroon 5 as a whole?
So, I really can't talk about my discovery of Kara's Flowers of this album in particular without discussing Maroon 5. And much like you, I found them the way that a lot of people our age did, which was through the radio or perhaps through MTV. Because when Songs About Jane came out, they were just coming on with a few hit songs and a couple of hit videos along with that at the sort of latter day stages of MTV's popularity. And after that, again, you had your hits like Makes Me Wonder off of their next album. And then, like you said, Adam Levine gets on The Voice. He switches the sound to a full pop sound with moves like Jagger, including Christina Aguilera on that cut. And while I didn't mind that song so much, there was a point in which I really started to resent Maroon 5, and that was with their next album, which was Overexposed. And I'm pretty sure if I didn't have it at my number one worst album of the year, we did our rankings on our talk show on WGEV.net, I'm pretty sure it was at least up there, and I know for a fact that One More Night was my least favorite song of 2012. Both of which I am willing to say were probably overstatements. In fact, there's one album I just listened to a few days ago from 2012 called California 37 by Train, which I don't care how bad One More Night is, that album is a disaster. And if we ever review that album on the show, I must have done something very, very wrong to you, Ryan. But in my discovery of why I didn't like Maroon 5's music anymore, because I thought stuff like One More Night and Daylight were a big, giant step down from the likes of This Love and She Will Be Loved, I decided to sort of, in my perversity, decide to look up, what exactly is this band doing? Like, where did they come from? What happened to the band that did Songs About Jane? And then I discovered that they did something before that, and that's this album. And out of curiosity, I was just like, okay, so what did they sound like before Songs About Jane? And so I listened to it, and there were enough songs that stuck with me that it always kind of lingered as a curiosity in the back of my mind to perhaps save for a rainy day. And this rainy day has come, or perhaps this snowy day has come, because it is, again, very, very cold outside. I will not stop beating that drum. And from what I see, the day we're going to release it, it's going to be cold too. So it fits just well. But that is a very brief backstory as to my understanding of Maroon 5. I've always kind of, again, I had my appreciation for them, then I had my depreciation, and everything else has been just kind of, they're there. I see them.
I mean, I totally get that sentiment, and like I do want to make it an maybe like a an asterisk to a couple of the points that I made about like Maroon 5, because I was looking up like a couple of their singles post moves like Jagger, and like in 2014 they released that album 5, and it has the song Sugar on it, and Sugar, I can get down with some Sugar, that song slaps, but yeah, it's been a while since I've listened to like anything else post moves like Jagger, and like for me, like I heavily judge a band's ability to be good with producing an album's worth of like material that doesn't suck. So yeah, I at least want to make it known that I do dig some Sugar out there. So like if anybody sees me at a wedding in the near future, wink wink, that if Sugar does come on the radio, I'm like, hey, that song, I can dig some Sugar, pour some Sugar on me, but no, not really. But anyways, I digress. Enough ramblings coming from the man who, is just ready to dive into this album by Karis Flowers called The Fourth World. And the first track is not just called Disco, it's indeed called Soap Disco. Matthew, the floor is yours. So why don't you kick us off and get us started here?
Thank you, Ryan. I will very much do so. And we start with Soap Disco, the first track off this album, and what would go on to be the lead single for Karis Flowers. And after a couple seconds of noise, a little bit of guitar warm-up, and just sort of that, hey, we're ready to go sound, it just goes right into it. And what you hear in my mind is a blueprint for the sound of early 2000s punk pop, or at the very least, late 90s punk pop. Because, once again, Rob Cavallo was a producer for Green Day, and so this is a sound that's a lot brighter. This is a sound that's a lot more polished and pop-friendly than he was used to, and that a lot of people were used to. Because rock in the 90s started out with the Seattle Boom, and then went into the more adult alternative scene with bands like Spin Doctors, Counting Crows, Smashing Pumpkins. I'll throw Dave Matthews Band in there. But there really wasn't any room for anything poppy, at least not as a whole in the rock scene. So what Maroon 5 is doing here is kind of adventurous, kind of risky, and in some ways it works, particularly the band sounds quite good on this track. The way that Dusek lays down the beat, the way that Levine plays on guitar. I had forgotten that Levine was a guitarist, and I forgot that he was a solid one at that. Particularly the second of the solos on this song is just like, whoa, this is definitely a rock band with a rock band sound. And vocally, Levine does well. He doesn't sing very powerfully, which is kind of a theme for a lot of later work with Maroon 5, if we're being completely honest. But the band power's hard, and he's singing in tune with the melody. My only real issue with Soap Disco, and it's one that's going to rear its ugly head a few times during this review, not only are the lyrics a bit smarmy and very much I'm in the know and I'm up on a perch, but I also don't really know what they mean. Because what exactly is Soap Disco? What is this Soap Disco that they speak of? And I'm kind of wondering if they are trying to make a play on some sort of show, like maybe a TRL or an American Bandstand, where it's just like, hey, here's this band performing their hits, and here are all the clean-cut kids getting along with this clean-cut rock and roll, wink, wink, wink. And the problem with that theory is that it's just that. It's a theory. And I'm not saying that every song needs to explain to me what it is, but it feels like a lot of these lyrics are trying to say something, but they don't actually say anything. They're just implying that something is there. They're implying that, something ironic or interesting is happening. And I don't really think it works the way they want it to. And overall, I do not like the fact that this song was chosen as a lead single. Because as far as a lot of the songs on the album is concerned, this is probably in the lower tier for me. Not so low that I'm going to go and call this my least favorite song on the album, because for full disclosure, I don't have a least favorite song on this album. I had a couple that came close, but nothing that quite scratched me to the point of, nope, absolutely not with this. The flip side of that being, I do have a full top 3.
Oh, all right. And I was about to make a joke about you don't have the bottom anything. Is that a hint to something? But you kind of illustrate to the point of nope. There are some subpar tracks here, but nothing that really makes you upset. So there you go, man. And so for me, a couple things I want to address coming right out the gate. I'm going to start with the lyrics. On one hand, I do want to give him a little bit of a pass, because from my knowledge and my recollection, at this point, these are just a bunch of teenagers that just graduated high school. Like for my knowledge, like in 1997, Adam Levine was 18 years old, so they're not gonna have like the biggest set of lyrics and like anything that's gonna come across as like super deep or anything like that. And like we've talked about it plenty enough in our show here that sometimes lyrics can be just window dressing. But on the flip side of that, like you also got to consider like another band that we've reviewed in the history of our show, that being Paramore and their album Riot, and like the lyrics that were off of that album and what that band was able to produce at that point. Again, two different kind of scenarios. Like with the Fourth World here, like you get more of a rough cut, like almost like an underground rock kind of sound here. With Riot, that was a lot more polished. You get like the Fueled by Ramen label producing that. So like on one end it's apples to oranges, but still 18 years old doesn't really there's plenty enough 18 years like young people writing like decent lyrics out there. But that being said, about the lyric writing as a whole, I actually didn't mind it. And like for me, when you were asking what is a soap disco, what does it mean, and I was thinking like, yeah, this is the question that we need to ask in the year of our Lord 2026. That's gonna solve the world's problems. But like for me, I kind of took the whole like concept of a soap disco, like from in the lyrics, it just seems like the Adam and the Gain are like talking about like the crowd getting old, the disco's back, or so I'm told, and like they're trying to bridge like the old past music to the new music, and the use of the word disco is like I do dig that, and like for me, like not the word disco, but like the genre of disco, but for me, the concept of soap, like maybe just trying to have like a clean transition, or like just bring something new to the table, clean up disco. I don't know. That might be me stretching that meaning right there, but that's what I took away from that song. I do agree with you though that Adam does do a solid job vocally here, like with like some exceptions throughout the album. Like he generally just stays in the pocket, nothing too crazy. And like even on a side tangent, I'm not the biggest fan of Adam Levine's vocals. Like I feel like he's overrated as a vocalist, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too harsh on vocalists in the first place. Maybe I need to look at myself in the mirror. But like again, like I don't think I'm alone with that. And backing up to the instrumental portion of it, like you call this sound like the blueprint for like punk pop in the early 2000s. I kind of saw this as just basically a cut and dry, take on like pop rock, not punk, pop rock. A la Goo Goo Dolls, a la Third Eye Blind, Matchbox 20. Like not so much of like Green Day, The Offspring, but that was from my ears. And like you also get like some really interesting stuff that's occurring within the song. I agree with you. The second guitar solo was phenomenal. I did appreciate how it was constructed with the drop down in volume and instrumentation, and then you build it back up. Like that was executed pretty flawlessly. The first guitar solo in the song was a little bit tame, and if that was the only guitar solo within the song, I would have been like, well, okay, that's Baby's first guitar solo, but who am I? And coming out of that second guitar solo, though, I do like the cutting out of the instruments with the call and response dynamic, bringing everything on home. So that was a highlight. But yeah, as many praises as I have laid on this track here, I do agree with you. Like as a whole, like it's like it seems like pretty. Like, this is their first gear. This is basically, like, a generic pop rock song with, a decent guitar solo. So in comparison to the rest of the album, this is in the lower tier of the tracks for me. But not so much so that this is a bottom track by any means. And my full gamut here with this review is, yeah, I actually have a full gamut. I have a top three and a bottom three.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, yeah, to me, again, this just does not sound like a lead single. I agree with you that it definitely sounds like this band is in first gear. And I think that's why I felt like the lyrics and the playing, it almost feels like, have you ever seen the movie That Thing You Do?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, this almost feels like a half pastiche on that. Like they're kind of going for like a '60s pop rock sound, but kind of more ironic, and that's kind of why I labeled it as pop punk, because they're trying to wink and nod and be like, "Oh, we know what we're doing here, ha ha he he." But realistically, I don't think they do, because again, they are in first gear, and you make a good point that they are teenagers, and I am willing to cut them some slack for it, because again, even if they were like in their early 20s, like if you're doing something for the first time and it's clear on this song that they are, you kind of want to go easy on them. So yeah, why they chose this as a lead single, I'll never know, but overall, this song is what it is. It's fine. Now, whether we will consider that moving forward, let's find out, because the next track of 11 on the debut album by Karis Flowers, entitled The Fourth World, is called Future Kid. And Ryan, the floor is now yours.
So with Future Kid here, I do appreciate what the group was going for in terms of like shifting the songwriting from a straight rocker with a decent guitar solo to almost kind of a big rock ballad kind of sound. And yeah, just getting into the nuts and bolts about it though is right away, one of the things I've noticed was the dynamic range of the group, and how they exercise that throughout the track. And they do a pretty good job. Like the switch up from the verses into the chorus, that was pretty good. Pretty noticeable, and it landed well in my ears. And also, talking about other nuts and bolts about the instrumentals, the various guitar licks that you can hear throughout the song, they add another texture to otherwise what could have been another run of the mill track within the landscape of pop rock. And you know me, I always kind of like it when you have that instrumentation that's adding parsley, or just nice accents to a track. I always do appreciate that. The guitar solo found within Future Kid here is pretty solid. Nothing really to write home about, but it does the job very effectively. And also throughout the track, it's very pleasant to the ears, where you get the guitar echoing the vocal lines, the main vocal melody. I thought that was executed pretty well, and that was very thoughtful. It was pretty good. And also, the main area where this track shines instrumentally is during the outro, how the instrumentals really kick it into another gear. And I'm going to talk about this aspect throughout this review, but it almost seems like Karis Flowers, when it comes to doing outros whatsoever, it almost seems like they are trying to go for that big rock band moment for at the end of every song, where they just jam out on instrumentals for maybe 30 seconds and they cut out, then that's fine when it lands pretty well. But I just had to notice that as a kid who grew up playing rock band, and those moments did happen throughout various songs. Moving away from the instrumentals, the vocals here from Adam Levine, I thought you got a better performance here. His range matches the song composition pretty well, in terms of the dynamic shifts between the verses and the chorus. That was pretty solid. And also I did enjoy the lyrics as a whole. The whole song seems to be telling a story about how this how a country can convince you to give a shit, but ultimately it fails you. And as a millennial, I can relate. But yeah, otherwise, like, with Future Kid, I think we're getting towards the middle rung of what this album can offer. Like, I did appreciate this a little bit more than Soap Disco, but not so much that I'm like this barely missed the cut for like a top 3. It's a fine track though.
For me, Future Kid, I thought it was a little less than Soap Disco. Not that I thought it was terrible by any means, but I do agree with you that the band does sound very good, and I did notice that they, like you said, they had the sort of jam out outros that really don't fade out. They more or less just stop. It almost feels like they're going for a live feel throughout the album. Like, if you're going to see us live, this is how we're going to sound. We're not going to have any of that, true polish of a major pop rock band. When we're done playing, we're done playing. We're not going to be faded out like a bunch of sissies, which, okay, fine, sure. But as far as the song itself, I do agree with you that Levine does sound good, or at least he sings good. I did think his vocals were a little buried, but that's a little bit of a minor nitpick. The band does sound good. They rock hard. The guitars sound great once again. I did like the fact that this sound was a little bit more subdued, almost like they're leaning towards the softer side of alternative. I sort of thought about songs like Nirvana's Lithium or even Polly, just as a couple examples. I did not quite appreciate the lyrics as much as you did, though, because again, I feel like your description of them is probably correct as far as what they're going for, like this stance of, here are all these things and here's all this consumer products to make you feel like a true person, but reality, it's not the case. But I think ultimately that is once again a theory, and looking at the lyrics as they are, again, they were teenagers, I will grant them that, but I just feel like they are trying to not only suggest something without providing a whole lot of context clues, but it also feels more so like the lyrics are rhymes more than they are actual lyrics. Like, a line like Teddy Ruxpin is a whore, like, I'm sorry, that just, like, got real forced on me. Like, it felt like that was just, like, you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole, and it just kind of, it just didn't right on my ears the right way. But ultimately, though, I can't really say the song is that bad. This was probably another song like Soap Disco that could have been a bottom track, but ultimately, I thought the music was good enough and I thought the performance was good enough that I gave it a pass.
And that's fair, man. And like, one thing that I do want to, I don't know, maybe grant you permission on, is like, if you really want to, like, tear into, like, the lyric writing, but you feel like you have to, like, give them a pass because they were teenagers. I mean, rewind to a couple of episodes before this one. We were talking about Big Thief and Double Infinity, and with the track Happy With You. Like, Adrienne Lenker is known for being a great lyricist, and that was a track she produced. And she's very much not a teenager, dude. So, like, if you really want to dig into, like, the lyric writing here, like, by all means, like, filter can come off, man. You're in good company here.
No, I understand where you're coming from. And, yeah, it doesn't really matter whether you're 18, because, again, if Reprise Records and Green Day's producer are thinking you're good enough, then you should be good enough. And again, musically they are, lyrically they're close. Close enough that I'm like, okay, let's see what else they have. But you're right. As far as like comparing this song to Happy With You, yeah, I would probably rather listen to this song again.
Oh, man. Shout out to Big Thief, man. We are definitely... I mean, outside of that, well, anyways, we are gonna pivot back into this review here, and Matthew, you are next on the docket here, and you're gonna be introducing the next track here, which is indeed called Myself.
Yes, Myself, and here we have what I would consider a much stronger set of lyrics, because here, instead of trying to rhyme about slime or Teddy Ruxpin, here you have lyrics that feel a lot more heartfelt from Levine's perspective. And the fact that he is a teenager here, I think, lends some credence to the song as a whole. Because, as you mentioned in the opening lines, I have tried very politely to tell all my enemies to go away. And he's trying like hell to avoid hell. Like, as someone who was raised Catholic and went through Catholic school and youth group, something about the song, man, just like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, it felt like very encrypted in guilt, anxiety, loneliness, and within that trying to find some pride, that this reclusive state that, you have to be this clean, prim, and proper person, and you have to feel pride in that. Like, that is, it felt targeted almost. I was like, whoa. Yeah, no, I was this kid. I relate. I could very much relate to this, and the angst is very much appreciated. Also appreciated are the musical stylings of Karis Flowers, and what makes it better is the fact that the anxiety-laden lyrics seem to be matched with anxiety-laden chords. The way that Levine's vocals tend to just sort of teeter between the same line, but they change it just a little bit on the verses. Like, I really liked that note. It was sort of very jazzy, very grungy, very angsty. And the chorus itself, I thought, was very solid and strong too, where Levine is basically saying, I'm trying to work on myself. And it's a good thing to work on yourself, and a good thing to acknowledge that you're trying to preserve yourself, make yourself better. Whether this is the right context to do it is left to be a mystery, which, again, I very much appreciated about this. And yeah, this to me is one of the first real strong songs on the album. So much so that we have cracked my top 3. I have Myself in at number 2.
Man, you're very egotistical putting yourself in number 2, man. But, oh, man.
I could make myself number 1.
Yeah, true. Well, I guess in that case, you're very humble. I digress. For the sake of making another Kendrick Lamar reference there, my thoughts about Myself, in that being the track that you were just talking about, a lot of things that you talked about, I agree with wholeheartedly, and then maybe some more. Like, I'm going to start with the lyrical analysis. You talked about, like, this being a very, like, anxiety-ridden kind of, like, track on the lyrical front and the instrumental front. But on the lyrical front, I 1,000% agree with you, and I also, like you, 1,000% agree with, like, you know what? Yeah, this is basically me. Like, to a T, I very politely told my enemies to go home. Like, I'm never the one to, like, really get up in anyone's face and be aggressive. I'm more like, hey, maybe you should reconsider your options. Maybe I should really change that about myself in the year of our Lord 2026. Maybe that'll lead to a better world. Anyways, I digress. But, like, one of the lyrics that I did want to highlight here, because, like, for the first time in this review here, we do have a lyrical highlight for me, is the bar where he's talking about, I've tried so very hard as hell to stay away from hell and live upstairs. And this bar kind of reminded me of the concept of, like, I might be misquoting what this style of Christianity is, but I'm going to call it attic Christianity, where, like, you're up in the attic, you're trying to stay away from, like, the main party downstairs, you're trying to, like, find your own meaning of Christianity, and like you're trying to, live life by your own terms instead of like being with the main crew downstairs. And like just that thought alone, like that bar alone made me think of that like thought. And I'm not going to dive into religion so much because that is not the purposes of this podcast. I'm the one who's mainly just connecting the dots here. But yeah, good bar nonetheless. Vocally, Adam's vocals are pretty solid, and one of the main things that I really, really, really did like about the track as a whole is how he matches the lick of the song and the feel of the song throughout the whole song. And when I'm talking about the feel, like it's very much like a la Black Sabbath's Iron Man, where the instrumentals are doing a melody and the vocals are matching the melody pound for pound. You get that here myself, and I very much enjoyed that throughout the whole song. The backing vocals in the song are pretty solid, nothing to write home about. But another thing I do want to highlight on the vocal front is the way that the bridge ends with the pop on Go Home and how that leads into the guitar solo. That was almost a chef's kiss kind of moment. That was very solid. Instrumentally, like the only thing I want to highlight is basically, well, I already talked about like that main guitar lick, and like I do want to highlight it is very hypnotic and it's very good, and I really do like how it grounds the song throughout like its runtime. And also, the counter guitar, the counter guitar lick that is introduced, like I think like halfway through the track, it pops in, and it's a pretty good touch. Like you could have just very much written that overall feel throughout the whole song. It would have been very effective, but to introduce a counterpoint, I do appreciate that. The guitar solo that I talked about in the vocal, dissection of the track here, it's pretty explosive and it is so good. Yeah. The only other thing I gotta say about myself is maybe I'm a little bit more egotistical than you, because, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, did you hear that sound? That is the sound of the chimes of victory playing in the background, because we've arrived at my favorite song off the whole LP, Myself Takes the Cake, man.
I completely understand, man. Like, this track is very, very good. Like, it just, again, like you said, the musical stylings work so well. And I think one thing that really helps is at the top, particularly on Soap Disco, I mentioned how Levine, throughout the history of his career, going all the way to the present day, has never been a very big singer. Like, he has a very thin tenor and has a very sort of thin delivery. Here, that delivery works so well with such a thin, sort of introverted, sort of wrapped up in yourself type of song. It sounds as anxious as his vocals are, and it works so well. So I just want to point that out too. But I'm glad you agree, man, that this track is just so good. It's angsty, it's tough, it rocks, and it just pops in all the right places.
So moving on into the next track here is indeed the next track is called Oliver, and I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Maybe I was trying to make a pun off of Oliver Twist, but nothing came to mind. But yeah, with Oliver here, we kind of shift into a different I don't want to say a different kind of track, because this almost kind of seems like we're getting back into the gear of Soap Disco and more straightforward pop rock, but with more of a heightened kind of focus. And I think one of the things I don't like about this track coming right out of the gate is Adam's vocals, and it's not necessarily that he's sounding wrong on pitch. He's sounding wrong with rhythm. it seems like he's struggling with the amount of words that he's trying to say. And if anything, dude, like, do another take, cut the words down. You don't need to say so many words. Like, try again later. But yeah, that's one of the critiques I kind of had. And also, zooming into Adam as a whole on the lyrical front, the lyrics are kind of meh. I mean, like, honestly, like, this is one of the songs that I kind of identified as, like, this is a window dressing song in terms of lyrical writing, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's plenty of examples in history, like lyrics being like basically meaning nothing. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of just there, and nothing really to write home about. One thing I do appreciate though is the switch up within the song to include the character of Nancy as a like to counteract like this Oliver person. But honestly, like, I don't know what's going on with Oliver or Nancy because nothing's really fleshed out. So I don't know what this song is really about. But, I mean, I will tip the cap to, like, switching up the lyrics there. Instrumentally, I did find some fun moments within the track. Like, the dreamy breakdown that occurs during the bridge was a nice change up. And then after that, the instrumental break that occurs is pretty good, especially where you get the guitar chords like accompanied by like just accompanied by space and like being able to breathe pretty effectively. But as a whole, on the instrumental front, like outside of those moments, like everything's pretty locked in. It sounds pretty good. I've definitely heard this kind of track before. But that doesn't take away from the track's overall presentation as a whole. But yeah, Oliver is fine. It's definitely in the mushy middle for me, along tracks like, Soap Disco and Future Kid. I think around the middle of the album, honestly.
I'm curious as to what your bottom three is if you're coming out of the gate with he's off tempo, but it's fine. But that being said, I say Oliver. I probably appreciate this track a little bit more than you, although I will give credence to the argument that this song doesn't really mean anything and the lyrics are very much window dressing. Like, I don't know who Oliver is or why I should care, or who Nancy is and why I should care. Maybe Oliver is a pun like the words all of her, and maybe all of her, the her is Nancy. I don't know. But again, that is, like you said earlier, that is a bit of a stretch as Ryan takes the dagger and slowly removes it from his arteries. But yeah, I thought that the lyrics were very much window dressing, but to me, this song almost became a top track just on the pure musical performance alone, because the band is putting the power in power pop. Like, they may not know who Oliver is or Nancy either, but they are playing as if it is like their lives depending on this knowledge. Like, the drums sound great, the bass sounds great, Levine's guitar sounds great, and the way that they all do these sort of stomping downbeat note for note on the choruses really, really works. I did like the instrumental bridge, like you said, where it sort of pulls back before building up with a sort of homage to the Beatles' Twisted Shout before the most random key change I've heard in a while, heading into the final third of the song. So yeah, I was very much taken aback by the band's performance, and to me, this is one of those songs that epitomizes the high points of this song is good as long as you're not paying attention, because I would say this song is great if you're not paying attention. But unfortunately, from a lyrical perspective, which is the paying attention part, yeah, it's very much a nothing burger. So Oliver, despite its best attempts, is not a top 3 track for me.
I mean, I feel like you might have like been onto something with your illustration of Oliver being a metaphor for being all of her. So like, the kudos to you. As much as I wanted to throw myself off the Brooklyn Bridge for that. That was excellent dissection on your part. That could have honestly been the actual meaning. So who knows? I think Adam Levine knows, but I don't have his phone number, and I know you don't. And that saga will never end because we don't want his phone number because that would be weird to have. And oh, hey, by the way, Matthew, the next track is indeed called the Never Saga. And why don't you kick this one off, man?
I will gladly do as soon as I delete Adam Levine's phone number from my phone. So the Never Saga, here we get a bit more of a, I guess we're still in the power pop mode, but we've definitely toned down the speed quite a bit. And now we have something that probably falls that same line of bands you were talking about earlier, like the Goo Goo Dolls, or especially not Jimmy Eat World, Third Eye Blind, the other one. And the way that this sounds, though, almost reminded me a bit of like Oasis in a sense. Like they are definitely going for a much more lush sound. With strings and layers of guitars, and just creating this sort of backbeat with orchestral ambiance that Oasis had already perfected by that point, and the Verve were just right around the corner with Bittersweet Symphony if they had already turned that corner. But that being aside the point. The point is that the music is very lush on this song, and Adam Levine sings very much in a balladier type way. And I will say, the chorus of this track is wonderful. Just the way that you get the I found out, da, 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 da. Like, it just works so well. Unfortunately, however, not everything on this song works well. Because the lyrics to me, once again, these guys are teenagers. I'm willing to concede that. But once again, it just feels like not only do I have no idea what any of this stuff means, particularly on that chorus that I mentioned, sounds wonderful. It feels lyrically like it's unintentionally unresolved. Like, I know sometimes when it comes to lyric writing, even with like something like Coldplay's Clocks that we talked about several months ago, you sort of get that ambiguousness of a lyric like "you are," and you're just like, "You are what?" But here it just feels like the way they end their sentences is to not end them, and they're doing it either because they don't know how, or they want to give off the feeling of open-endedness without actually creating an open end, and just sort of leaving a frayed knot of a phrase as the closing part to, again, what sounds like a wonderful, beautiful chorus. So I can't tell you what the song's about. All I can tell you is that it sounds really good, and much like Oliver, this one was another close cut. Like, I would probably easily put this in like the top half of the album, but not quite in my top three with the Never Saga.
I feel like the lyric writing here that you were trying to illustrate, it almost seems like the anti-hashtag rap verses, like, that we were kind of talking about in the previous review with Taylor Swift. Like, instead of like, saying like, I woke up, like I woke up, Simba, like. The bar would be, I woke, and also that statement probably offends so many people in modern day that I unintentionally just made that, but I digress. But yeah, outside of making fun about the lyric writing as a whole, like, I agree with you. Like, the lyrics here are a mixed bag. And what I mean, like, a mixed bag, like, there's going to be plenty enough examples throughout this album here where if a track is a window dressing lyric kind of track, I'm going to clearly label it as that, and I'm good with that. But if there's also like an attempt to like write a thoughtful kind of song, like, I'm also going to attempt that. I want to also like pinpoint that as I did with like, myself. But here, like, you can go either way. Like, they are trying to make a statement. Like, I do appreciate, like, this interesting story that they're trying to tell, where this girl living the family life with tired eyes, and how she got snatched up, and this future kid is on the prowl, possibly to save her. But it's kind of weird to, like, label something as being on the prowl as, like, something positive. That point of being what it is, I do appreciate the callback to the previous track of Future Kid. I thought that was clever, nonetheless. Outside of the lyrics though being a complete mixed bag, instrumentally, here I really didn't dig the instruments so much. Outside of, like, a couple of moments, like, you get the strings towards the end. Like, I'm always I'm always a fan of, like, nice strings, and when they're executed pretty well. So I thought that was pretty good. And also you get the drop down that occurs in the instrumental break. I thought that was pretty effective as well. I did appreciate what was going on there. But, like, you kind of saw this song as being, like, a beauty kind of song. I just kind of saw it as, like, a little bit of the run of the mill, the instrumental front outside of those moments. And also, like, I'm also going to levy some critiques on Adam's vocals here as a whole. Like, they don't land for me within this track. And I almost want to just say they don't land in the sense of, I don't believe what he's singing. He's not singing with passion or anything like that. And also, like, he also gets pitchy at some points, which is always a turn off for me. So, for the reasons of that, and the lyrics being a complete mixed bag, ladies and gentlemen, do you hear that sound? That is the sound of the toilet being flushed right now, because we've entered bottom 3 territory. And the Never Saga is my third least favorite track off the whole record.
Oh, third least. Okay, all right. So we've crept into toilet territory with your bottom 3 here. And I kind of understand where you're coming from. Again, I really did like the chorus on this track, but I sort of tip my hat to Rob Cavallo for making it sound as big as it was. Because I feel like if this were stripped down to any other length, it probably would be about as nothing burger as you could possibly get. And as far as the pitchiness of Adam Levine's vocals, I probably would agree with you if I was really, like, trying to nitpick for that. But overall, I thought the song was pretty solid. And again, it had a really strong chorus, and the nothing lyrics really kept it out of any contention for top spots. So I understand that. So with further ado being not of the sort, I will throw it to you for the next track, which is the midway point, 6 of 11, and the song Loving the Small Time.
And with Loving the Small Time here, I feel like we pick up the instrumentals here a little bit. Like, I felt like the whole song kind of had like a bouncy kind of feel, and I felt like it was pretty nice. And the guitar lick that is featured during the instrumental breaks that acts as a guide, like, for the listener to get to the next section, is probably the main thing that is good about this track. I did enjoy that. The chorus is a nothing burger for me by definition. Like, it went in one ear, out the other, and dude, that's an issue for me. Like, if I really don't get anything from a chorus, I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, you need to try harder, man. And on the flip side though, the come down from the bridge was executed pretty well, and the outro to the song was pretty solid as a complete package. Shifting over to the vocals, Adam sounds fine here. Like, he doesn't sound pitchy, but he does kind of come across as uninspired during the chorus, which does add to the nothing burger effect. My main issue, though, with the song as a complete package is the lyrics. Like they're pretty bland and kind of half-assed. Like you want to know how much I wanted to research on like how half-assed these lyrics were, and just how repetitive like the whole song was, because it's basically all the chorus and you get some repetition of like other bars. Like I actually opened up Gemini, which is for those of you who aren't aware, that's like Chat GPT for Google, and I said, "Hey Gemini, like what? Like out of all these lyrics here, what percent of words are repeated?" This is how much this song kind of annoyed me. And you want to take a guess on the percent of words that are repeated here?
I'm assuming that the fact you're bringing up is going to be kind of high. I'm going to say 75%.
Okay, so you're overshooting by a little bit, and that's honestly what I would have. That's what I would have picked as a number, but it's actually 63% of words. So not as it is high. And I also wanted to compare it to like another track that we talked about recently, that being the Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift. And for those of you who are curious, the percent of words that are repeated in that track are actually higher than this track, and that number being 70%. So, yeah. But, like, here's the main... not that I want to compare apples to oranges here, because, you get more repetition in the Fate of Ophelia, but the song's overall package is much more impactful. Again... we're talking about two different kind of production styles, so I'm not going to really dive into it that much, but I just took issue with how the chorus was basically a nothing burger, and they were riding that nothing burger home until you got to the chum bucket and Bikini Bottom and try to pass it off as a Krabby Patty, and I'm not for that, man. I'm not for that. So, I'm not going to even try to come up with a clever illustration for how this track is in my bottom three as well. But yeah, I'm just going to come out and say, Love of the Small Time. I did not love The Small Time. So much so that is indeed my second least favorite track off the whole record.
Second, so you brought out stats and signs, everything. We're still not at the bottom. That's that says something for what we're getting to the bottom, and I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. But for me, I will agree with you on some things. First of all, the problem with the lyrics is the problem that I've had with several of the lyrics on this album so far, is that they imply something happening without explaining it. And to me, it feels like they're trying to imply the most basic feelings. It can't even get that far. I will agree. This is very much a nothing burger of a song. I do admit the chorus does sound good. It's one of those situations, much like the Never Saga, where if I'm turning my brain off and I'm just listening to the melody, it sounds good. It sounds passable. It sounds like filler on pop rock alternative radio in the year of the Lord 1997. And as far as Adam Levine's vocals, I think the problem with them on this song is this. It's not that they're bad. I think his singing is in tune. I think his singing is, at the very least, going along with the melody of the song. But the problem is that unlike a situation like the lushness of the Never Saga or the anxiety of a song like Myself, here the band is going for a much faster and much more power pop song. And the problem is Levine's power doesn't match the band's. It sounds very punchy and full of guitars and full of drums and full of energy, but Levine still sounds like Levine. He still has that soft delivery that doesn't do well on a song like this. This song very much is a mixed bag all around. This was probably another contender for a bottom track, but I really couldn't hate it so much because, again, songs I would consider a bottom track, like we talked about last week with Taylor Swift. I'm not going to spoil which track it was, but a song like that is so bad that you can't even enjoy it when you're not paying attention because it forces you to pay attention to it because of how rough it is. There was not a track on this album for me, although there were moments where, like you said, things did get a little half-assed, a little lackadaisical, a little nothing burger level. This was a track in that category, but there was enough there that, once again, for them being teenagers, I was like, all right, this is solid album track territory, so be it.
And I very much appreciate that mindset, and it's like a mindset that I try to implement in our reviews as of late. Where unless the track kind of does piss me off, and apparently this track did piss me off so much that they had to utilize AI to analyze the amount of words that are repeated there. But I very much appreciate that mindset. And before we kick it on into the back half of the record here with the next track being To Her with Love, Matthew, I know it's cold outside, but I hope you're ready because I have a question for you.
Well, my digits are still moving and I haven't started shivering, so I believe I am ready for your question. What is it that you must ask, Mr. Kearns?
If the dear listener out there right now is very much enjoying what we are bringing to the table here with this review, talking about Kara's Flowers, aka the pre-Maroon 5, some people may call them Maroon 4, and they are wanting to help, support what you do on a week in, week out basis. What are some ways that they can help show their support, love, and in addition to that, connect with us on different platforms?
The fact that you came with that Maroon 4 joke before me, I am ashamed. I feel shame on that one. But to answer your question proper, if the listener wants to help us do what we do here and hey, listen to this, the first they can do is keep on listening to this. And the way they can do that is finding us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are on Apple Music, we are on Spotify, we are on Pocket Cast, and we are also on YouTube, which is not technically a podcasting platform, but at the same time it is because, well, we upload our podcast there every week in our video format. So if you like using YouTube or YouTube Music, you can find us on there as well. Also, if you're looking for a way to share us with your friends, but you're not sure which friends fall in the category of someone who would appreciate a discussion on Maroon 4 or Taylor Swift or more obscure bands like Eve's Tumor or Toledo, we are on social media as well. You can find us on the likes of Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, or Threads. And the username for any of that is ttheylisten. That is T, the word hey, and listen, all rolled up into one. That is our username on social media. Also, if you're just looking for us, you can simply type in hey, listen to this, and find our backlog of episodes and share us with your friends that way. And lastly, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email account that you can reach us at. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. That is where you can give us feedback, whether you liked the episode, whether you thought the episode was rather not to your standards, or if you want to suggest a future episode, because we have done listener requests in the past and we would like to do them again. So again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. And for those of you who've done any of these things so far, whether it's listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice, sharing us with your friends on social media, or reaching out to us directly, thank you. Again, me and Ryan are just two dudes who like to talk about music. We're not sponsored by any major corporation. We're not part of any major podcast network. We're not bought and sold by the Kremlin. We're just two dudes who like to talk about music. And as from one dude who likes to talk about music to another, Ryan, I thank you as always for being a great co-host and help her out with not just putting this all together and putting the episodes up, but just, again, being the solid counterpoint to whatever shenanigans we get into week in and week out, because we've had some disagreements over the last several weeks, but they are all in civil, good fun, and serve a great purpose of just digging deeper into our musical libraries.
And right back at you, man. I very much have enjoyed the musical journeys that we've gone down. I've added a handful of records to my record collection as a result, and also I've been exposed to different musical acts that I never would have dove into before. So yeah, and like I said at the beginning of this episode here. With us diving into Taylor Swift last week, it helped us become more, at least it helped me become more knowledgeable about the state of pop music. And with that in mind, a little bit of a teaser for next week, I kind of have something fun and relevant cooked up for us for our next review. But we'll get to the end of the episode when we do, and then I will reveal that rabbit when I do. But that being said, Matthew, we must, before we get into next week's review, we must finish off this week's review, and the way we do that is we dive into the next song here, which is indeed called "To Her with Love," not to be confused with "She Will Be Loved." The floor is yours.
Thank you. We will continue on with this rabbit before we get on to the next one. To Her With Love is the first track on the whole album, and probably, I would argue, maybe even the only track, maybe with the exception of a couple others later on down the line, that qualifies as a ballad. And so far we've gotten Maroon 5 going power pop or, punk pop or lush pop, as we saw with the Never Saga, but nothing that was very much a full-on ballad. But here it very much is stripped down to acoustic guitar and some Baroque backing instruments. I think you get some strings in there, maybe some woodwinds. And this time it feels like a proper mise-en-scène for Levine's vocals, because as I mentioned in the first half, he sings well throughout this album, but he does have a thin delivery that isn't always suited for hard rocking guitars. So without any hard rocking guitars here, he finally has a showcase to show his vocal range and perhaps do so on a tender love ballad. So it is no surprise that he delivers what I consider to be one of the best vocal performances of his entire career. He sings wonderfully on this track. And I think what helps it along is the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, Ryan, these guys are teenagers. Adam Levine is just coming out of high school, and this sounds like a high schooler's love song. He's basically saying, I hope you keep holding my hand as I hold yours, and I hope you never have to wonder why that's the case. It is such a song of innocence and a song of very tender earnestness. It's not going for the home run, baby, you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and let me be the best thing that ever happened to you. There is, again, much like we saw with Myself, a bit of a reserved nature in Levine's vocals and a reserved nature of, hey, I do love you, and I hope that this works out, instead of saying, hey, baby, you and me are the greatest. We're going to be the greatest lovers that ever was. And if I'm going to be completely honest, this review is not happening without this song. Over the years, there is always one song I would go back to from this album, just because of how well it sounded, and it's this one. Because, once again, it has the earnestness, it has the vocal performance of a lifetime from Levine. It definitely falls in the category of Beatlesy ballads, kind of like a Yesterday, but hey, Yesterday is one of the greatest songs of all time, so who am I to knock a song for trying to go in that category? And here I think Levine very much succeeds. So yeah, we have once again cracked my top three, and I don't think it should come to anybody's surprise based on what I said, that this song finds itself right at the mountaintop. To Her With Love is at number one.
So you were talking about like this being a very tender love ballad and like a high school kind of love. I I'm gonna disagree with you only on a minor sense. I do believe that this is a love ballad, but I don't feel like this is like a high school kind of love. I feel like again, like for me, like it's kind of unclear who Adam's singing about, but I believe that this is like to a child that has grown up, whether that be his own daughter. Again, at this point, he's young, but like I do appreciate the lyric writing here, and he's just wishing for like her to grow up and to be loved. To quote a Maroon 5 song, but like yeah, and like I'm really appreciating what Adam's delivering here on a lyrical front. Like for the second time within this review, we actually do have a lyrical highlight for me in this track here. And the lyrical highlight I do have is when he's singing about take your dollhouse dreams and make them real, and like that's such an encapsulation of like childhood innocence and like you're playing with like whether that's like your Spider-Man, so trying to be a superhero, or you're trying to like have a dollhouse and just like trying to envision like a good life for yourself. Like I did appreciate that through and through. And I also do agree with you. Well, I do agree with you about the overall vocal performance from Adam. Like he does get pitchy in a couple spots, but dude, like this is his best vocal performance throughout the whole record. Like, and it's not for the sake of like he's delivering like excellent notes, because I did note that he does get pitchy, but he's very convincing here, and that's the main thing that I did appreciate about the track as a whole. Instrumentally, like this song is very sweet. It's basically an acoustic guitar ballad, but the guitar is doing more than just simple chords. It's doing a lot of like finger picking stuff, and I did appreciate that. And like changing up stuff. Like it could have just been an easy Wonderwall kind of setup. No shade to Wonderwall, that's a wonderful song nonetheless. But like I did appreciate what the guitar was doing, and the strings that accompany the guitar and Adam's vocals are a great touch, and especially how everything comes together in the chorus. Like chef's kiss, man. So the only other thing I got to mention about with To Her With Love is, ladies and gentlemen, do you hear that sound? That is the sound of the Keurig currently making coffee, and it's about to be done because we've indeed landed in another favorite track off the whole record, man. And we are 2 for 2 with our top 3 here so far. And also, interestingly enough, we flip flop our top 2 tracks, with me putting To Her With Love as my second favorite track off the whole record.
I very much appreciate that. Again, this song just works so well. Like you said, again. So 2 more things about this before I step off the podium here. First of all, the pitchiness that you talked about. If we're going to talk about the lyric writing as being sort of, hey, they're teenagers, let them go, I'm also willing to concede that a little bit vocally. Again, not completely, because again, they were signed to a major record label and they thought they were ready. So if you want to blame the record label, go ahead. But none of that is to the point that, again, I agree with you that this is Levine's best vocal performance on the record by far. But to counteract your thought about this being a song about maybe a love song for like a child, maybe like a little sibling or something like that, that he cares for, I don't completely disagree with that theory, but my counter would be my lyrical highlight off the track, which is right at the end of the second verse, where Levine's talking about how, uh, all the gold and diamonds in the world could not replace your face. And I'm paraphrasing there, and I know that's not the exact verbiage, but basically he's saying, all the luster and gold and shininess of objects that are desired by the world can never replace, the beauty that is your face. To me, that sounds like romance. Like, that sounds like I want to kiss your face romance, which, whether that's the case or not, I'm not sure. There's a lot of ambiguity on the lyrics throughout this whole album, because this is, again, a album by a band that was yet to become a band that people would pay attention to on a mass level. So the information about this stuff is rather limited. But I can wholeheartedly say that I'm glad we agree that To Her With Love is just one of the best tracks on this album by far. And with that, I am ready to pivot, if you are, Ryan, over to the next track, which is Sleepy Windbreaker.
Oh, yeah. And with Sleepy Windbreaker, man, I am totally ready to dive into the track. Fortunately, with Sleepy Windbreaker here, I have some thoughts, but they're not. Look, I'm gonna come out right out of the gate and say that this isn't the flaming turd sausage that my least favorite track is. So with Sleepy Windbreaker here, and I'm very much ready to talk about this track. I'm gonna start on the instrumental front. I did appreciate the bait and switch that you get hit with immediately, with the instruments starting slower and kind of minimal, and then bam, you get hit with that tempo change. That was very nicely executed. I did very much appreciate that. The instrumental break towards the halfway point is fairly solid and progresses pretty well through a couple different sections. So again, hats off for that. The lyrics here, though, kind of like in the Never Saga, they're a mixed bag, because they kind of straddle that line of being a window dressing, but trying to have some sort of meaning. And it just seems like after they had the first verse that was basically almost like an intro, and then they had the second verse, and then after that they're yeah, whatever. They kind of had the song 2 by Blur kind of effects. Yeah, let's just ride the chorus home, whatever. We don't care at this point. But yeah, outside of the lyrics though, Adam vocally, he kind of does struggle a good bit. Things end up sounding flat at several points and lifeless, despite the instrumentation that's occurring. So yeah, the only other thing I really got to say about Sleeping Windbreaker, if there was an album track to be had throughout this whole record, this is very much an album track through and through, because I don't really have too many notes on it. You get some good, you get some bad. It's very much like life, man.
That's fair. I probably appreciate this track just a hair more than you do. I will agree that vocally Levine is very much, I say he handled the situation more than he thrived in it. Because overall I would say the band is going for something that's sort of post-psychedelic. If To Her With Love was their Wonderwall, this is a little closer to their Champagne Supernova, just to make a comparison. And with it, again, you're getting some notes of twisty-turny, organ fills, and just sort of a more poppier, brighter, trying to be weird but not super weird sound. And I think this is territory that Levine can handle vocally, and like I said, he does. He doesn't shine on this song. He doesn't put in the performance of a lifetime, but I thought he sounded all right. And as far as the lyrics, I do agree with you that once again they enter into the territory of trying to imply something without having too much meaning behind it. But honestly, there was a lyrical highlight for me on this track. There was it was a lyric that to me didn't really help the overall like package of the song, but stood out enough on its own that I think it deserved to be highlighted. Which is the line: "The sailors are taking a stand with their heads buried deep in the sand." And I don't know why that lyric stood out to me. Maybe it's because we're in January of 2026 and it feels like there are many a sailor taking a stand with their heads buried in the sand. I'm not going to get too deep into why I think that's the case, but you have social media, you watch the news, you could tell me. But aside from that, though, the lyrics are very much, again, sort of there as window dressing, and they don't really stand out. And the music itself sounds fine, but doesn't super stand out either. I'm kind of with you on this one. I would probably put this right down the center of the track as far as songs on this album. Like, this is probably like a 6 or maybe even a 7. Like, it's fine, but it's fine.
Yeah, and I feel like here, you can feel free to chime in with your analysis as well. With this kind of record, you do like it's very much a product of its time, where you get like songs that specifically stand out for one reason or another, but then you also get like kind of a mushy middle kind of group of tracks where they're fine, like they do have like some faults by design, but like nothing too offensive where you want to like throw your laptop across the room. So yeah, I don't know if you feel the same way, man.
I kind of do. I would say some of that mushy middle I'm a little higher on than you, but overall I definitely get what you're saying, and I would say that for sure this section of the record, or at least this couple song stretch that we're in, is sort of the mushy middle or the sort of flabby padded section of the record.
So yeah, man, we're getting into the home stretch of the Fourth World. We are officially about to discover what the Fourth World is about. And the way that we continue on in our journey is we kick it on into Pantry Queen. And Matthew, the floor is yours.
The floor is indeed mine. Now, for those of you who have ears and are paying attention, you might have caught on to something, which is me saying that we are in the flabby section of this record. Now, that being said, my favorite song on the album was 2 songs ago, so you might have an inkling of what I'm going to say about this song. Pantry Queen, here is a song that's a little bit more mellow, a lot softer than Sleepy Windbreaker. And this song, to me, was another contender for what could have been a bottom track, if I'm being completely honest. For several reasons. First of all, musically, it doesn't really stick out a whole lot. Like, everything sounds good once again, but it's one of those songs that after you've listened to the album front to back, and you think about the songs off of it and try to like remember any of it, this is one of the ones that fall way in the back. Like, you're gonna have a hard time remembering a whole lot about this song. And as far as its content, to me, this song reminded me of a song that was a few years after this song, which is a song "Pinch Me" by the Bare Naked Ladies. And I mentioned this song on Hey, Listen to This before, but it's sort of an underrated hit from the Bare Naked Ladies from the early 2000s. And despite having a very like up-tempo, poppy beat, it's a very depressing song about being depressed. It feels like this song's trying to be that. It's trying to be sort of, hey, the world is what it is, and I guess it's okay. But it also feels like they're trying to be hopeful. Like, this song, to me, its biggest problem is can't decide what it wants to be. Does it want to be hopeful that it can, take back from what is being taken from them? Or is it just sad that, something's being taken from them? It really can't decide on whether it wants to be sad or hopeful. And honestly, the music doesn't do it either. Like, the music is just kind of unsure in that same category. And that's before even getting into the idea of what the Pantry Queen is or is supposed to mean. I would say Soap Disco has more context, and that's saying something. But But overall, I am going to give this song a pass just because there was nothing in it that really, truly, deeply offended me. As far as it being sonically wrong or something being off or this sounding like this. But I would say, like, if I had to choose a bottom track, I'm not going to, but if I had to, it's probably this one.
A lot of things that you talked about with like this being kind of a directionless kind of track, and I agree with you. Like, man, like I'm just gonna dive into my thoughts and feelings about Pantry Queen, try to make sense about like how I feel about it. So, the instrumentals aren't bad. I'm gonna start there because I feel like that's where I started with a lot of the track discussions here so far. Like they're a bit a run of the mill, like oh hey, yeah, we are very much of a pop rock group of the late '90s. This is what we do for like our ballady kind of songs. But one of the issues that I did have within the song on the instrumental front and even on the vocal front is very much like one of my bottom tracks in the record. The chorus here doesn't feel like a chorus. Like it just feels like a nothing burger. It could have just been like another part of the song, just a verse that gets repeated. Like nothing makes it sound different, and that's an issue, man. Within the context of like you constructing a pop rock song, like you want your choruses to pop, hence the genre label. But I will say though, like one thing I do want to give the track kudos for is I did appreciate the section where you can hear the bass exposed for a bar, but that's pretty much about it. Like one of my main issues with the track though is like you're talking about like the directionless of it, but Adam just seems like he's kind of phoning in his performance. Like it's pretty, like he's pretty bland and uninspired here. And like it just seems like he was just like, oh yeah, hey, I'm just gonna go up here and sing this song about Pantry Queen. But he could have really dug in and made it a pretty good song. But like, yeah, like it's just, yeah, it really annoys me within the context of this song and one of my bottom songs here, like where the chorus doesn't feel like a chorus, like it's basically nothing. It's almost like you get to the chorus and you get a backhanded like, hey, you want some substance here? This is the anti-chorus, and like if you're gonna go for that, I have opinions about that, but they're not positive opinions. So, yeah. Outside of the instrumentals and the vocals, like the lyrics here aren't bad, but this is definitely a window dressing kind of song. But like upon further reflection, though, within the rankings of my appreciation about like all the tracks here as a whole, as I progress through my listens of the album. Like this track kept falling and falling and falling so much that it actually landed in the basement, man. Like there was no more falling to go, like in the house of this of Kara's flowers here. So yeah, I again maybe this shouldn't be my least favorite track, but like I just there's nothing here. Like there's no point. Everything kind of just feels phoned in, and I feel like the only thing I liked about the song as a whole is the one section where you can hear the bass being exposed for a bar. And if that's the only highlight that I can take from a song, that's pretty bad, man. But yeah, for lack of a better descriptor, and just officially vocalize it to you and the dear listener out there, Pantry Queen for me is indeed my least favorite song off the whole record.
So I apologize to any of our listeners who are using a pen for their scorecard. Because based on what you said, because you mentioned that bass part being exposed for like a bar, and honestly, I can't even remember that. So I'm going to join you in solidarity here, my friend, and I'm going to put Pantry Queen at the bottom too, because literally I am struggling to remember how this song even goes. I just remember them saying, sort of quietly Pantry Queen in the background. Like, that can't be your highlight. It's just, like you say, this sort of almost kind of like a hashtag rap where it's just like, this life is what it is. Hashtag Pantry Queen. Hashtag yeast. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's just, so I'm right there with you. Pantry Queen is my least favorite track off this whole album. Not by a lot. Like, if I was listening to this album front to back, I probably wouldn't skip it, but I'm not probably listening to it either. It's just like, oh, okay, Pantry Queen. Just enjoy my own thoughts for a few minutes. Cool.
Ultimately, I'm pretty excited that I was able to, inadvertently convince you that this is the least favorite track off the bottom track off the whole record. And I think one of the things that you kind of illustrated about like how you were struggling to like find anything within the song. I think the main reason why the song ended up as my bottom track is the fact that I just struggled listening to it. Like, it was just boring for me. Like, there was really nothing there. So, but I feel like we've indeed discussed Pantry Queen enough that we've earned the right to pivot on into the penultimate track on the record. And that track is indeed not My Ocean Green, but My Ocean Blue. And I'm going to kick this one off here. And yeah, here with with My Ocean Blue, like, I'm really digging the instrumentals here. Like, the bass and drums are doing a very solid job driving the beat. And the overall feel of it's like, pretty bouncy, kind of islandy, and very fun and flavorful. And like, that definitely separates it from the crop of the tracks here that we've experienced here so far. Based on that fact alone, the switch up that occurs in the chorus is pretty unique and is executed pretty well. Like, things kind of slow down, and it just seems like we're popping into like, a happy, like, go lucky moment at the end. So I did appreciate that. That's pretty good. The instrumental outro of the song was pretty good, and again, like I kind of illustrated earlier in the review, like, it just seems like with the outro here, Maroon 4, aka Carrots Flowers, was executing the trope of like a good old rocking outro to a song where like the instruments are just jamming and just riding everything out. So that's always good. Vocally, Adam is doing a very solid job here. Like, I did appreciate what was being brought to the table. It just seems like he's really enjoying himself. The backing vocals are solid here, and like, throughout the record, like, we don't get the backing vocals throughout every track, but when they do pop up, they're pretty good. And also that switch up that occurs during the chorus, like, I did appreciate what Adam was doing there in terms of feel. And yeah, the only thing I want to talk about with My Ocean Blue is the lyrics. Like, I feel like with the lyrics here, they're pretty solid, and I'm gonna put them in the bucket of lyrics that actually mean something. And it's actually kind of funny with My Ocean Blue, because they talk about this lovely girl whose name was Jane. Possibly an allusion to the next album in Adam Levine's discography being songs about Jane, where Maroon 4 becomes Maroon 5. But yeah, like, I did appreciate the lyric, like, progression, talking about the story about his relationship with Jane and experiences with her. So yeah, that was pretty tight. Nothing really to write home about in terms of a lyrical highlight, but yeah, overall though, like, I was digging the overall package. The instrumentals were solid. The clever twist in the chorus was good, And the lyrics were really good. So, yeah, only other thing I got to say about My Ocean Blue is we've completed the top 3 in this review here. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you are hearing the sound of the microwave going off. My Ocean Blue is indeed my 3rd favorite track off the whole record.
The microwave sound of 3rd place. Favorite Fall Out Boy song for the record. So My Ocean Blue. For me, I did catch right away that this was a song about a woman named Jane. And it does kind of feel funny to me that was, again, possibly an homage to the album that would come out 5 years later in songs about Jane. Like Adam Levine was just sitting around singing, "Remember Jane?" You know, kind of like, "Remember Jet?" Like, it's just kind of one of those things where you're just like, oh yeah, her. And as far as the music is concerned, I'm right there with you. Like, to me, what surprised me about this track is how adventurous it was. Like, obviously hindsight is 2020, or in this case, 2026. But knowing what Maroon 5 usually does, which is find a groove and stick with it, it was very off-putting, but in a cool way, to hear them just kind of go over the place. Like, the opening island vibes that you were talking about kind of reminded me a little bit of what was to come with Sugar Ray. Like, I could hear this sort of in the same category as, like, Fly or Every Morning. And then you get to the chorus where it drops out for a little bit to more of a straightforward rock, and then just picks up the swing like it's a Stray Cat song. Here's like, this band is doing all of this. And I know last week with the title track off of Life of a Showgirl, I made a mention of how I'm not a fan of songs sometimes when they go over the place. But I'm going to be honest with you, it worked here for me. Like, I really appreciated how everything just sort of went from one to the other without making any sort of real twist that I didn't appreciate. And I'll give credit to Adam Levine. He sounds really good here vocally. The fact that it's in the same key and same vocal range as To Her With Love kind of helps. Not that that was their intention, but it does in fact work. And yeah, I'm right there with you. I also have this in my top 3, so my scorecard is completed. My Ocean Blue does take the bronze for me as well.
Oh man, so yeah, like that means for this review, man, for its entirety, like in terms of like highlights and well, the one low light that you discovered that you wanted to actually put as a low light, and I shared with you, like our scorecards are pretty damn near similar. So like, we had some swapping of our top 2 tracks, and I had like other bottom tracks that I wanted to highlight. So much so that one made me bring out AI to analyze the lyric structure, but that's a story. That was a fun time. So, but yeah, that makes me excited, dude. It's been a while since we've had like a top 3 that was pretty much in lock.
Yeah. There's been a few rare times where we had a similar top 3. I know there's been a couple episodes where I know there's one episode I remember particularly. I'm not going to spoil which one, where we had the same exact top 3. But yeah, I'm glad we kind of agreed on which were the highlights off of this album, being The Fourth World by Kara's Flowers. No disrespect to the final track, which is Captain Splendid, which I'll just go ahead right into, because obviously it did not land in either of our categories. But I will talk about the highlights of it as much as I can. First of all, I haven't mentioned it so far in this review, but I'll mention it now. I could definitely hear the Beatlesy influence that Adam Levine has. I did mention it a little bit on Oliver, but not so much throughout the rest. Possibly in the case of Sleepy Windbreaker as well. But here, this is Adam Levine seeming to go full Paul McCartney with this final track. Or at the very least, copying Paul McCartney, because for those of you who aren't aware of your Beatles history, this song, Captain Splendid, very much for a 1 on the verses, seems to note for note copy the song For No One off of Revolver. I noticed that after my second listen. I was like, oh, okay, all right. There are worse songs to rip off, but this is indeed a rip off. And yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I also found it interesting that for the second, arguably third/fourth song in a row, we are dealing with a nautical theme. Like we had My Ocean Blue. Before Pantry Queen, we had Sleepy Windbreaker, which had some talks about sailors with their heads in the sand. Now we have a full-on song about being Captain Splendid aboard the ship. So I thought that was kind of interesting. As far as the rest of the lyrics, I didn't think they were that much to write home about. I thought they were fine. Basically, it's about trying to feel happy on a sinking ship and struggling to do so. As far as the outro, Dead does not rhyme with Splendid, though I appreciate the attempt. And also, I gotta give the band chops for sounding pretty good. The first 4 minutes or so are nice, slow, easygoing, and then it goes into full band mode for the last track. And once again, Adam Levine, he may not be Eddie Van Halen, but he's a pretty solid guitar player, and this track proves that once more. But ultimately, Captain Splendid is a song I'd probably put in the middle of the tracks if I ranked them front and to back. It's fine. It's pretty good, but I wouldn't say it's like a highlight of any type for me.
I feel like with Captain Splendid, I'm a bit higher on this track than you. Obviously not my top three because that has been fully revealed. But yeah, getting into the nitty-gritty here about the track. I'm going to start with the lyrics. I mean, there really isn't so much of a lyrical highlight for me. And I feel like since you drew the comparison to For No One by the Beatles, I want to listen to the tracks back to back, because if that's the case, it might sink the overall appreciation that I had for Captain Splendid. But if you're going to rip off the Beatles and you're going to rip off good songs are good songs. But yeah, the lyrics here, they're pretty good. I did appreciate what was happening throughout the structure of the song. And also, we're definitely in the bucket of lyrics that actually mean something as compared to just window dressing with Oliver. But outside of the lyrics, Adam sounds fine here. It's basically Adam Levine as a whole. Outside of To Her With Love, I'm not the hugest fan of Levine's lyrics. Just personally, I've already illustrated throughout this review. But nothing to really nitpick or write home about. But I feel like here, what really sets this song apart on an appreciation standpoint is the instrumentation. The sweet, lush instrumentation starting off the track with the light synths and guitar, and they do a really good job establishing the melody, the flow of the track, and also just the overall package of the track where you can just sit back and just drift away. Nothing feels rushed. Everything is just properly paced. And I did appreciate that, entirely. And also, I do appreciate how you get that switch up that occurs around the 3-minute and 30-second mark, where things become more heightened, the dynamics are raised. It wasn't needed, but I did enjoy it nonetheless. It was a very cool moment. And how within that heightened dynamics, I did enjoy how big things ended up sounding towards the end of the track. You get a very focused sense of melody there, and things as a whole within the track resolve in a more kind of subdued fashion, though, but very nicely with that singular guitar line. So yeah, if I had to be honest with you, with Captain Splendid, I think I was a little bit taken back by the instrumentals more so than you. so much of that this was like the cutoff point for my top three. Like I did appreciate it so much, and I think what set the song apart, what set My Ocean Blue apart from Captain Splendid, was just that effect that occurs in the chorus of My Ocean Blue. But Captain Splendid is a splendid track nonetheless.
And that's totally fine. I again, this is a track I would say. Again, I probably wouldn't put it any higher than like Oliver or even the Never Saga, just because I think those songs sound better. But this is a song that sounds quite good too, and I would say it's a nice way to close out the album that we've talked about, which is what we have done. We have closed out our discussion of The Fourth World by Kara's Flowers, and as we have declared, 11 tracks up, 11 tracks down, scorecards filled out, and only one thing left to say.
We did it.
We did it. We went to the garden, picked out Kara's Flowers, and discovered that there were 4 of them, shaded in maroon, and we weren't going to wait another 5 years for a 5th flower to sprout. So, I'll go ahead with my thoughts on The Fourth World by Kara's Flowers, or as you so eloquently put them, Maroon for. I'm still pissed that you beat me to that. This album is fascinating to me because, on the one hand, facts are facts. These guys are teenagers. Their songwriting is raw. Their type of music is somewhat boilerplate at times, and it definitely gets into territories of playing for the sake of playing and having content for the sake of filler. But at their peak, like, you can hear in songs like To Her With Love, My Ocean Blue, and even Myself, like, this band really coming together to make a statement, make a point, and provide really, really good pop rock. And even on songs like Oliver or even Soap Disco, you can hear elements of stuff that would become a lot more commonplace towards the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s with bands like Fall Out Boy, Jimmy Eat World. I'll throw Blink-182 in there. Definitely a more clean but not as grungy sound as the likes of Rob Cavallo's other project in Green Day or bands like Nirvana et al. Adam Levine, I gotta give him props. He sounds good throughout most of this. His guitar playing is very solid, and it definitely reestablishes his rock roots, even though he would abandon them later on in his career. And the rest of the band deserves their flowers too. They sound very, very solid. And granted, there are moments where it falters to nothingness and boringness, but again, they were teenagers. I'm willing to cut them a little bit of slack for that. All of which to say is that I thought this album was quite pretty good. And with that, I'm going to give it an official rating of 7 out of 10.
All right. I can dig that. And with me, with diving into Kara's Flowers, like, I was really, I did appreciate the opportunity to dive into what Maroon 5 was doing prior to like breaking out with songs about Jane, because like oftentimes like in our episodes here we talk about like what was this band called before they were known as that band. So like I did appreciate like diving into like a world like this, and like here it's this album's very much a product of its time. Like I kind of illustrated, like you get some really good highlight tracks like My Ocean Blue, To Her With Love, and Myself, but like also you get a lot of mushy middle, and then you also get like a lot of like side steps, missteps, and just tracks that are basically nothing for the sake of nothingness and just being uninspired, just maybe are basically filler, but not good filler. And yeah, it just seems like here, I want to say Maroon 5 was trying to find their voice, but for what they like, where they go from here, specifically with their next album in the their catalog, with being songs about Jane, I don't see it. But I mean, I can kind of see the bare bones there, I guess. But I'm gonna just stop vamping for the sake of vamping, because I'm walking away with the feelings about the Fourth World by Kara's Flowers that. I had some highlights, but there's a whole lot of mid throughout the whole record. So, for the second week in a row, I, Ryan James Kearns, am giving an album a 6 out of 10.
Fair enough. So, the math is pretty simple. My 7 and your 6 average out to a 6.5 out of 10 because... Math works everybody. It does not discriminate. It does not hate. It is purely math, plain and simple. As far as my next album recommendation, I am not going to galaxy brain this at all. I am going to go with a pop punk record that we've discussed here on the show a decent while ago, actually. And that is Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World, because I definitely think if you're a fan of the kind of power pop that Kara's Flowers is going for and occasionally gets to on this album, I would think that the next step is to hear a band fully realize that power pop, punk pop sound of the early 2000s. And what better way to do that with an album from 2001 where Jimmy Eat World accomplished exactly that with songs like The Middle, the title track, Sweetness, etc. So, yeah, that would be my next step, is Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World.
And for me, I could easily just say, don't pass go, just collect $200 by going into songs about Jane. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of, follow your lead here inadvertently, because you identified Kara's Flowers to be more like punk pop. I identified Kara's Flowers to be more pop rock. And I'm going to recommend a album from a group from the late 90s who was, pretty quintessential in the pop rock world. And the album I'm going to recommend is actually from the same year, 1997. And that band who produced that album is indeed not Two-Eyed Blind, but Three-Eyed Blind. And it's going to be their self-titled release from that year. For those of you who aren't aware, that album has countless amount of quintessential tracks off of their discography. Most importantly, like Jumper or Semi-Charmed Life, quintessential pop rock staples of late 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, that's my official recommendation.
All right, so for those of you who are digging what you hear with Kara's Flowers, I'll point you in the direction of our recommended albums, which are the self-titled release by Third Eye Blind and also Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World, both of them based off of our experience with The Fourth World by Kara's Flowers, which we gave an average rating of 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, man, quite an interesting review we did. We definitely, like you said, dived into a band that was what they were before they became big, and I thought it was an interesting adventure.
Yeah. I'm very thankful that we did it, and it definitely helped expand my musical horizon. So yeah, kudos for you for coming up with this concept, man. Very, very good job.
I appreciate that, man. And now that I have expanded our musical library, it is now your turn to expand our musical library as we head to our final review of January 2026. And I know you were sort of teasing it earlier, Ryan. What do you have cooking up for us next time?
All right. I'm not going to give away so much with these choices between the two options here. I'm just going to have you pick a holiday based on the kind of vibe I got from the cover art of these two albums. And then I'm going to expand upon what you ultimately chose. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. The two holidays are the 4th of July or Valentine's Day.
Oh, Oh, the 4th of July or Valentine's Day. Well, for reasons I will not spoil, in lieu of not having an official Valentine's Day episode this year, I'm going to go with Valentine's Day now.
Fair enough, man. And that's a well thought out plan there. So, Matthew, are you a fan of football?
I am.
Okay. Are you gonna watch the Super Bowl this year?
Probably.
Okay. Do you know who's doing the halftime show?
Oh, I do know who's doing the halftime show. Is it one unlawful rabbit of sorts?
Yeah. I kind of had some foreshadowing there, man. So yeah, I felt like for somebody myself who was not really familiar with Bad Bunny and his music, and we've literally just at the beginning of this episode, I was saying I think it's important for us to dive into popular music, and it's going to be a huge cultural moment coming up here soon with Bad Bunny doing the Super Bowl halftime show. So I figured it would be a very necessary thing for us to dive into a Bad Bunny record, and that Bad Bunny record that you have chosen, sir, is his record from 2022 entitled Un Verano Sin Ti.
Okay. You know what? I'm ready for this. See, Bad Bunny's always been one of those artists where I've been familiar with their existence, but I never really dove into their music. So I am curious to see how this is going to go. So I applaud you for giving both of us, I would say, a challenge for next week.
Absolutely, man. So, dear listener out there, if you've never listened to Un Verano Sin Ti by Bad Bunny, make sure that you listen to that record. That way you can have opinions about the record. And, you got to have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are going to be bringing to the table on next week's episode of Hey, Listen to This. As for me, I know the world's chaotic right now. And I'm trying to manage, all the anxiety and emotions about, just not doom scrolling. So I'm going to try to have a new mantra. And I'm going to try to tell myself that I'm feeling well and life is swell.
Hopefully your life is swell.